And now we move to our main presentation in terms of the policy brief. And may I request Christy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and really humbled, privileged to make this presentation. Thank Venki, Gautam, IFRA team for giving Sue and me this opportunity to write this policy brief. We started somewhere mid-October, is when October 18th, when we started this process. And initially, a lot of thought was around rehabilitation for all. How do we include a large number of people who are left out, who might not be a person with disability in that sense, quote unquote, you know? And how do we talk about rehabilitation in a broader sense? So a lot of efforts went into looking at data and information related to whether it is women in general, or elderly people, or people in war-torn areas around their connect with rehabilitation. Have to say that it was not easy. Venki helped us a lot with lot of links and connects to find that information. And second was to look for actual data and actual researched publication around the effectiveness of CBR. All of us, or most of us who have been, who are sitting here today, have worked on community-based rehabilitation, have been involved in developing strategies or implementing programs. But we found that it was really hard to get evidence around the success of CBR from a, published perspective. Yes, a lot of our programs, when we do, we see that it is working well, but somewhere research around it, documentation has not been easy. However, we have sort of reached the stage with all the information that we could have. And the third part that I want to say is that we do have a larger document. So this question of whether we come out with a very detailed document which gives all the information, or we want to make something very brief for the policy makers was. And so we agreed on, we will look at a short policy brief, mostly for the policy makers, rather than looking at a detailed one. Having said that, we do have a detailed paper which is there, plus the executive summary and the short paper which has been shared with everyone. So for all those who want the detailed information, we do have a detailed paper also. So let me move to the first slide, in which you can see that. So first thing was to look for information around the need for rehabilitation, habilitation and rehabilitation. So we looked at it, and based on the 2019 study, we are saying that there are 2.41 billion individuals. That is 1 out of every 3 person, 33% of people in the world require habilitation and rehabilitation services. As we had Armand saying also, a lot of reasons cited. In fact, one of the WHO resolution also talks about it, the resolution 58.2, I think, talks about the reasons for it: poverty, war, violence, environmental degradation, diseases, accidents, all that are linked to people's need for rehabilitation. So it is important to look at rehabilitation from a larger perspective. And less than 50% of the people in many low and middle income countries receive these services. Also, to get data from only the low and middle income countries was another effort that we have done, because we were focused on looking at what's the data from the low and middle income countries and what is happening. So less than 50% of the people, as you know, was what we could see, that receive these services among the 2.41 billion, or 33%. It's not that all these people are people with disabilities. Now, the next one, what we looked at was that, so what about people with disabilities themselves, you know? So this is again the WHO data, which says that 1 in every 7 person is a person with disability, or 15% of the population, of the global population are people with disabilities. When we say this, they are people with disabilities, it is not just about, as we all know, the types of disabilities, the severity of disabilities. WHO itself says that about 2.2% of the people have difficulties in functioning. More than 3%, about 3.8% are people with severe disabilities. 80% of these people, of the 15%, live in low and middle income countries. So it is not about looking at the total numbers, but where are they? A large number of people belong to the below poverty line category. Most disabled people, that's where the poor is highlighted. And this includes children, this includes youth, this includes adults, this includes senior citizens. So it is the need to look at each group, each person differently from their context and from their needs. It's very clearly highlighted in the discussions on senior citizens, where everything is made for older people, but not looking at the individual context and needs of the people. That needs to be considered when we look at persons with disabilities. And when you look at, because of the fact that a large number of them live in low and middle income countries, which do not have, when we say what are the characteristics of an LMIC, they do not have the systems required, they do not have the structures required, they don't have professionals required. There is less money to invest on rehabilitation. The resources and the put in for rehabilitation, in spite of from 1979 work onwards, even for the 15%, nor for the 33% people, there has been very less resources allocated for rehabilitation of the people. So as a result of that, it leads to denial of access to health, of education, livelihoods, and inclusion, which is all part of CBR, which we talk about. Also, when we were writing the paper, we had to really, really narrow it down to from a health perspective when we were discussing and writing this brief, rather than looking at the other aspects of CBR. We did not really get into it. We were looking at more from a health aspect, how it has been impacted. So if you look at it, the lack of access to technology, it comes out very significantly. So also lack of access to different forms of rehabilitation. We might see sitting in India, sitting in Bangalore, maybe in certain places that all this is happening. But largely, if you look at it, there is severe, significant lack of access to rehabilitation or access to technology, assistive aids, or rehabilitation. There are studies done by different groups, which we have quoted in the large paper, that this access to healthcare is something which again prevents people in getting education or moving into livelihoods or participate in the programs or just living in the community. A large number of people also live in institutions and are homeless. This is very clearly again mentioned in the SDG report on disability. Very clearly says that a large number of people are homeless. And as a result of that, access to rehabilitation, even community-based rehabilitation, how do we reach across to people when people are homeless and are on the streets? Moving from there, what we looked at was what are the key frameworks, what has been going on from a policy level, the policy frameworks globally, which has been facilitating rehabilitation, particularly focused on people with disabilities. The WHO declaration, as we all know, the Alma-Ata declaration. Venki was very, very keen telling us that don't forget the Astana declaration, because it was reinforced by the group of people who had met in Astana. And, so we need to remind the governments, remind the people, there is also the declaration of Astana. It is not just the Alma-Ata declaration. There has been a reinforcement that the primary healthcare system needs to be established so that people in every nook and corner of the world, in all the villages, people have access to both healthcare and rehabilitation. Here is where we talk about an integrated system of rehabilitation. The resolution WHA 58.23, which very particularly looks at the link between disability, poverty, the environmental degradation of diseases. So where it urges governments to have rehabilitation to meet the needs of the large numbers of people. As we all know, all of us have been very particularly engaged and involved in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which has led to the two legislations in our country. Particularly now we have the Rights of Persons with Disability Act, which is there, and the implementation of that. A lot of us are working, NGOs are working on this. But it's also important that, you know, in times like this, to again go back to the resolutions. I think I particularly appreciate, because even as an implementer working, we focus on the convention, but not on the other frameworks, because how do people in rural areas, people in extreme poverty scenarios, how do they access the basic healthcare and disability services which they require, needs to be looked at, the integration of all this. The WHO framework on integrated people-centered health services of 2016 is very, very significant, because it talks about focus on the people. The people-centeredness come in very, very strongly in that 2016 framework. The Rehabilitation 2030 call for action, we'll be talking about it a little later, and the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, which came up in 2015, which particularly has actually 7 targets and 11 indicators around disability. So it is very, very important that we understand sustainable development goals and integrate the WHO framework on integrated people, or the Rehabilitation 2030. How do we align all these frameworks, and whether the resolution can talk about alignment of some of these action frameworks developed by different wings of the UN together as we move forward. We also looked at the different approaches of rehabilitation. What has been, since these frameworks has been there, what has been the various approaches. So as Venki highlighted, task shifting has been come out very prominently, where, as most of us do that, where community-based workers actually are trained, are facilitated to take care of identification, to take care of initial prevention messaging, taking care of treatment and rehabilitation, and sometimes to a large extent even palliative care, because we all know that there is a huge deficiency in trained people, in professionals to come and work in, as I said earlier, in particularly in rural areas. Also, the lack of sensitivity and awareness among the professional doctors or the healthcare providers in the countries to provide services to the people, the way in their context, in the way they are, in the way they require it, So that is where, again, task shifting has been to deal with to deal with the resource crunch also. It shows that this needs to happen for managing the resources, managing the lack of skills in the countries, and also to meet the needs of the people. So we can do 3 things if this task shifting happens. And so different agencies, as you can see, has been endorsing this sort of task shifting to people at the community level. It can be even carers, it can be parents, it can be, how can we promote task shifting to actually people who are closer to people with disabilities or people who need rehabilitation. The second was community-based rehabilitation, multi-sectoral approach with 5 pillars for equalization of opportunities and social inclusion of people with disabilities. We'll get into a little bit more into the CBR approach, because our particular um, task was to look at how community-based approaches and community-based, we really, Sue, I will say, really struggle to look at what are the different ways in which community-based approaches have been successful. Because of a lack of evidence on CBR, we really looked around to see in other situations. Venki helped us with a lot of information, but somehow we felt that it was not extremely relevant, from the rehabilitation context. So we did not add here, but we did look at CBR in itself. And so we all know that started and promoted in 1978 onwards, but we have the CBR guidelines, which came up in 2010. And many of you who are part of this discussions who are hearing me today has also contributed to the development of the CBR guidelines, which has come up. We could see that about 90 countries are implementing CBR in different forms, in different ways, and mostly implemented by development actors is what we can say. But however, we want to highlight some of the, the characteristics of the CBR is reaching every person. So wherever they are working, the focus has been on identification of people with disabilities and reaching to maximum numbers of, reaching everyone, not the maximum numbers. Let me say reaching every person. No, there are very few approaches which really looks at identification of the people, because particularly the smaller children and reaching out to them has been one of the prominent characteristics we could see in the CBR projects. Second was, it was very people-centric, facilitating inclusion of people with disability, facilitating inclusion in every sense where, people could engage. Sorry. Yeah. So CBR, when it's implemented in many places, is actually facilitating people to engage in decision making, to participate in the various other actions that is going on in the community, and people are involved in community-based rehabilitation. The multi-stakeholders who are involved, it's about talking to the parents, it's about talking to the teachers, it's about talking to the community leaders, it's about getting different people according to the context involved in the program and facilitating inclusion in its real sense. Most of the CBR programs are jointly operated by government, NGOs, and organizations of people with disabilities. We could sense that there was ownership by persons with disabilities in majority of the programs, and it also improves the well-being of the people, whoever is involved in the program, whoever could benefit from the program, particularly the beneficiaries. And even at that level, there seemed to be not just by the organizations of people with disabilities, but overall there has been an ownership by persons with disabilities in the program. Affordable and cost effective, as most of you have also earlier commented, because it was happening at the community level. There was definitely cutting down on transportation was coming out as the another major barrier. Lack of transportation facilities and cost of transportation was coming out as one major reason for people not reaching out for rehabilitation services, besides poverty and other factors, And so the cost effectiveness was coming out. Empowering and builds organizations, particularly fighting prejudices. So it is not about healthcare. See, when we started looking at, as I said before, at CBR and from a health perspective, what we could see is that CBR is more all-encompassing and it is more empowering. And right from the beginning, it's about the societal prejudice which is being fought and promoting inclusion. That is what CBR has been able to do, and building both the mother organizations as well as the organizations of people with disabilities. So it has really helped in building the organizations to promote inclusion and fight all forms of exclusion. And it is, but sustainability of the CBR programs has been mainly through the organizations of people with disabilities, because of their involvement, because they are part of the decision-making strategy and design of the program. The program is not designed elsewhere, and the linkages of OPDs with other groups in the communities, whether it is a women's group, whether it is a self-help group, whether it is those sort of linkages, and promoting, inclusion even within them, maybe we call it mainstreaming, we could see that these are some of the main characteristics which, we could see in community-based rehabilitation programs across where we have looked at. We also went through a dilemma, because for some of the things what we were saying, that the Rehab 2030 call for action, when we started looking at it, we found that almost everything that we wanted, WHO has in some way or the other captured. They continue to capture, and they are saying that. And then Venki had to bring us and point to us that, but it does not talk about the Rehab 2030 call for action, does not talk about community-based rehabilitation. It does not talk about, home-based rehabilitation. Can we talk about reaching out to people, in their settings, in the community, in the home base? So, but if you look at Rehabilitation 2030 call for action, which talks about the leadership to take action, for political support to take forward rehabilitation, emergency response, particularly in climate crisis situations, as well as in war-zone areas, integration again of primary health care with health and rehabilitation, integration of that. Almost everyone knows about all these things that we have written here. So this call for action, so we had a discussion with Venki and the team on, so what is it that we want beyond this call for action, and what is our position as far as this call for action? So what we are saying is that the IFRA members completely endorse Rehab 2030 and call for action. And this needs to be continuously promoted and supported in all the places. But we have a few more things that what we need. So I've put down the ask as it is written in the summary, rather than, breaking it down. A WHO resolution on attaining the highest standard of health for persons with disabilities is adopted in the 74th session of WHO. So we are saying that there needs to be a resolution calling for higher standards of health for persons with disabilities. WHO resolution on habilitation and rehabilitation for all should be adopted in 2022. So going beyond persons with disabilities. And we are hoping that maybe we could get more data and more substantial information, which will help to promote the cause for rehabilitation for all. You can see that when the Rehab 2030 calls for emergency response, certainly they are also aware of it, but this needs to be pushed forward. The two proposed resolutions mentioned above should have a central emphasis on the role of community-based rehabilitation as a strategy for habilitation and rehabilitation service delivery, especially in low and middle income countries. So the need for pushing CBR, because somewhere community-based rehabilitation and where the CBR has really worked and reached out to the large numbers of people with disabilities, we also are aware that there is also CBID, the community-based inclusive development. We have written that in the paper. So whether it is community-based rehabilitation or inclusive development through a large number of development organizations coming forward and applying CBR in their context, we need to push for CBR as a strategy for habilitation and rehabilitation, we continue to have, whether it should be just community-based or community-based includes home-based. I'm remembering the discourses from institution-based rehabilitation, and at some point we said IBR is also part of CBR. And then today we are talking about whether we should push for home-based rehabilitation, because even within CBR, there's a lot of home-based actually when we do a lot of programs, particularly with the large number of people with severe disabilities and with the poor, which cannot be, come reach out to institutions, and also recognizing that institutional care is very, very short term and it cannot be a solution. How do we promote CBR as a strategy? So definitely we are going to discuss that as we move forward. Very specific recommendations to the country governments have also been put down as part of this policy paper. A lot more information I want to tell you again is in the detailed policy paper if you're looking at numbers and references, etc. The recommendations to country governments are very focused on data and early identification and intervention. The need for early identification and intervention strategies at a very, very early stage, whether it is small children or whether it is a disability which has come. How can we help people to go in for that early identification and intervention? Data availability through periodic surveys. How do we get the data? Are we still relying on 2011 data, 2011 reports? How can we get more data through periodic surveys? They implement the integrated PHC CBR model and not universally is what we are saying, and not just as models here and there. Can we do it universally across where the requirement is there in all countries? Individualized development model for looking at the needs of individuals. We talk more and more about reasonable accommodation. So whether we can develop a model within CBR or within rehabilitation programs, which is more an individualized development model. How can we prioritize children, women, aged and severely disabled population? When we prioritize, certainly resource allocation comes as high priority, identification of the children, women and the aged and severely disabled population, and having specific programs to address their context. Home-based service by community workers, train and compensate the caregivers. The caregivers can be the parents, it can be people who are trained to look after, but how can we train and compensate? People with intellectual impairments, severe multiple impairments, chronic conditions and mental health needs require special attention and home-based care. So most of this are looking at the groups of people who will require that sort of attention at the home level. CBR applied university with digital technology support, all healthcare professionals equipped to deal with disabilities and chronic conditions. Rehabilitation should be the model of social inclusion and should address rights-based issues. It should not focus only on health and the medical model. Of course, we've been talking about all this for years, about the rights model, about social inclusion, but however, because of the gap in all this that we are seeing, because of the professionals more looking at it as a medical model, we need to still trust and keep pushing the agenda of rights for people with disabilities. Researched, evidence-based sharing and learning, how can that be promoted by the governments? Again, more investment towards research and building evidence around the impact of CBR or rehabilitation, or even the primary healthcare, how it has been supporting people with disabilities or not supporting. So how do we create researched evidence? Empowerment of women and persons with disabilities for inclusion and impact. So the DPO development or development of people with disabilities, and particularly women with disabilities, it should all be part of larger investment and larger priorities to be given by the government on this. So this has been the various recommendations that we have put together in that paper. but open to discussions, open to all the ideas that is coming from both policymakers and implementers. I'm sure that much more can be done, but this has been prepared keeping in mind again the um, decision makers, the policy makers at the highest level. So certainly from that angle, if more discussions can happen, it will certainly help in the finalization of the paper. Thank you very much, everyone. Basically, I've just put together Sue and Venki Gautam, and we had 5 people who had reviewed the original papers that we had submitted and shared. I can see that even as of today, comments are coming from different people, but there are around 6 to 7 people who have contributed with their comments and recommendations from the initial stage of the paper. So thank you everyone for giving me this time and listening to me. And over to Akhil and Venki.
Thank you very much, Christy, and big thanks to Sue, Venki, Gautamji, and all the reviewers for giving us this draft. Now,